Marcus.
Well done.
First clap to self. I think I'm now going to keep that in.
Yeah.
Well done. I've set up my podcast system, and here we are.
Nothing collapsed.
Yet. Touch wood. Thanks for driving down.
No, all good, man. Thanks for having me.
Very, very excited for this. We met 3 years. Fuck.
End of 2020, I think.
Yeah. What's that? 2 years. Well,
nearly 3.
Let's go there. Let's pull the number out. Yeah. In my head, I was like, I know exactly when we met. I'll pull it out. And then when I jump on live, I'm like, was it?
It is now.
But something that I just found out about you, you made your international TV debut.
I did, yeah, which was really kind of fun and really trippy because it was also my first film job ever.
How?
I'd love to say pure skill.
Talent,
I think it's
good looks.
I think 90% of it was luck because I played Lars Anderson in season 2 of The Young Rock, and he was a real life wrestler. Him and his brother were like this wrestling duo, and it just so happens that we're basically twins. He too has a brow that you could build a house under, has a very, very deep voice, and is kind of gigantic. So the fact that I looked basically identical to him, I think, was the thing that kind of sealed the deal.
That's still awesome. What was that like for you? Let's go back to the phone call that you got from like management or agent or however that came about.
Well, I just come out of a doctor's appointment, and my agent called and he was like, so what are you doing on Friday? And this was on the Tuesday.
Yep.
And I was like, nothing. And so he said, well, how about you head to the Gold Coast, do the filming, but you also need to go down on the Thursday for your costume fitting. So I then had to, this was like start of this year, so it was like full on COVID land.
Yep.
So I had to go and get a COVID test straight away that had to be negative within 24 hours of arriving for my costume and hair fitting. And then, of course, you get there for the costume and hair fitting, and that was all really, really cool. It's like a whole little city just sitting outside the seance stages with all the caravans and like the trailers and all that, the big catering tent. And yeah, I ended up being there for about 8 hours for hair, makeup, and costume.
Is that how long it took?
Well,
or was that just sort of waiting around as well?
There was a little bit of waiting around because they were working with a couple of other people, but because I've got a giant head, it's 64 centimeters around. They couldn't find a wig that fit.
Really?
Yeah.
So you had to get the custom wig? Or?
No, because I was filming the next day.
So what happened?
They ended up finding me this really big, like Farrah Fawcett wig, and they put it on, and I looked absolutely beautiful with the big, long, flowing hair. I looked like a member of the Bee Gees, which is kind of okay.
Self-proclaimed.
Because they needed to have something that was long enough and big enough and at the back that would cover my hair. And so they pulled it all the way to the front, and the back of their wig is meant to come to where your hairline is, but it came to about there. And so
for those who are watching, who are listening, it's like we're talking the top of the back of the head.
Yeah, like a skull cap. With a back fringe. A skull cap with a back fringe, basically. So then the next day when I had to drive back down, it was basically a process of having 3 hairstylists around the back of me, just like curling it and trying to get it going. So I kind of looked a little bit at that point like Lord Farquaad out of Shrek, but just
it's
big
my
and blonde.
Film. I love it. It's a good film. But big and blonde.
But big and blonde.
Oh man, what an exciting! And then you said once you'd finished filming that one, you got a call to be in a Disney one as well.
I did. It was literally that afternoon. I was driving off from Village Roadshow, and then I got a phone call from my agent. They were like, you know that other big, incredible thing that you auditioned for? They want you for the role. And I was like, sure. I can't really talk about anything beyond that because there's a very scary NDA, non-disclosure agreement that
you don't want to.
Will probably see me put in, I don't know, like a prison cell if I break it.
So I'm responsible for that because I brought it up on the podcast.
Yeah, you did, and that's okay. It's fine.
It's not where you want to end up.
No, probably not.
No, I can respect that. We'll wait and see. When it comes out, I'll talk about it. I'll go, I know this guy.
I knew that guy.
Yeah.
I think it's the end of next year.
It's crazy how long out it takes to get a film together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Fuck. Is it so for you? Is it like you're sitting on this so excited to tell people and show people, but you can't say a single thing?
Yeah.
Is that teaching you patience?
It's teaching me something. More to bite my tongue, I think.
Yep.
But no, it is it's odd because you've got to, negotiate with your other employers and say, oh, I have to go off and do this thing because I've got a job. And they're like, oh, so what is it? Oh, it's a job. It's a film job, so I'm just going to go do that. And then everyone's trying to like tease little details out of you all the time. The biggest hint they got was the mutton chops. And everyone was like, do you play like a 1780s butcher or something like that with like some big blood-stained apron with a big meat cleaver? And I was like, well, maybe. I don't. But
yeah, you heard that. I don't.
Or do I?
Yeah, well, the plot thickens now. Everyone's sitting there going, I was just enjoying my morning coffee. Now I'm confused.
Look, I'm confused as well. It's fine.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Well done, mate.
Oh,
very, very exciting. What's one thing you're grateful for at the moment?
I think the thing that I'm mostly grateful for at the moment is that I think I've mostly found balance, or as much balance as I've ever had.
What do you mean by that? Like
that I feel like I'm relatively in control of work things. Even though just before we started recording, we were talking about how uncontrolled I feel with my study at the moment. I still feel like I know what I'm doing, even though I'm starting to fall behind. Daryl, if you're watching, I'm sorry.
I will. He will catch up.
Yeah, this is the reason my assignment's late.
Yeah, I'll take responsibility.
Yeah. And then, things in my personal life are starting to kind of fall into place as well, because this half of the year particularly, I've gone from lecturing full-time and also running a business and studying to lecturing 1 day a week and then running my business and studying part-time. So that's allowed me to put in these really kind of clear barriers where I sit down at the computer every morning at 9:30. I don't start teaching and coaching clients until 10, and then I'll generally try and finish by 4:30 each day, so that then I've got 4:30 to 5 to do any emails and like admin follow-up.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, and then it's when the laptop closes, I don't open it until 9:30 the next day. I don't really care what it is. I won't open it until the next day.
How do you remain disciplined with that? Do you find it challenging?
No. I probably would have at one point. Like 3 years ago, I would have found it really, really hard to just not work.
Yep.
But that did see me end up in hospital with chest pains and on the doorstep of pneumonia and all of those kinds of things just being run down. So that was a pretty harsh lesson to learn. But I think now it's that I know what I want to do and I know what I want to be spending my time doing. So I do it. and not only in like my own time, because like over the last kind of 12 to 18 months, I've started restoring furniture as a bit of a hobby.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's this nice mindfulness while you're actually, I don't know, it feels like productive mindfulness.
There's something therapeutic about it.
Yeah, and something super, super nice of stripping off this really old, yucky yellow finish off a nice piece of furniture from like the 60s or whatever, and then giving it something that gets the same tone but doesn't look gross.
We did that through COVID. Amy called it, I think it was upcycling or something like that. And she was like sending me things on marketplaces like, can we get this?
Yeah.
I'm like, for what purpose? She's like, we'll get it. We'll take it up to Toowoomba to my parents' house, and where there's a workshop, we can strip it back, paint it. It'll be a fun activity for us. I was like,
okay.
Oh, fuck, right. But then when we got into it, I actually really enjoyed it. We've got, I'll show you after in the living room, we've got an orange, like a peach coloured one, and because Amy loves her colours, and then a pink one.
Yeah.
But we restored and gapped, and, it's a fun process. It is, and you just switch off and you're just in the moment while you're sanding it back. It's quite a nice mindfulness exercise.
Yeah, it is.
I like that.
So I think because I found that, and that's the thing I've always kind of wanted to do, I prioritize doing things for me as well as prioritizing things for work, and making sure as well that I stay grateful about the things that I get to do to work. My mentor, Patsy, who's one of the world's leading vocal coaches, something she said to me very, very long time ago when I started training with her was that, we've, as a vocal coach, as an actor, as a creative artist, we've all got to kind of take that little check to go, okay, yeah, your work can be stressful, but you're not trying to save someone on an operating table that's got less than 5 minutes to live. You're not trying to put a building that's on fire out, It's stressful, but at the end of the day, my work is, I must remember words. I must remember
Yeah.
where to stand and where to face.
Yes.
So it's stressful while you're in it because, yes, you're trying to enter other mindsets and juggle where the 3 or 4 cameras are at any point in time and making sure that you're ready for any fight choreo or anything like that. But I think remembering the privilege of being able to get to do those things for a living, I think is super important.
It's a great point. It's practicing gratitude and something that's definitely overlooked, because if I feel a lot of us, myself included, I go through moments where when my life's, I'm feeling stressed or I'm feeling unfulfilled or unhappy, it's always like, what do I need to fix this? And quite often it's trying to add something to my life, add something to my plate, buy something new.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's like we do need to check in with what we've got. Because as you said, we're not trying to save someone within 5 minutes. Like that, when you said that, I was like, I don't know what I'd be doing in there. I'd be shaking and wouldn't feel good. But it's like we do have a lot of amazing things around us. We do have a lot of amazing people around us, and it's very, very easy to take it for granted because we get in this pattern or cycle, and what our body or mind does when we do repeat things, it's like, all right, this is now a habit. You don't need to think about it.
Yeah.
If you're not thinking about it, you don't need to even appreciate it. It's why it happens in relationships, in with our health, various other things. But if you can stop and go, man, for me, like every morning, it's like I'm so grateful for my wife, even though there's some days when we're bickering or whatever. It's like I'm so grateful I get to wake up to you next.
Yeah.
Wake up to you next. Fuck, tongue twister. Wake up next to you every day.
We'll work on that next class. It's fine.
Next, please help me. But it's been, for me, watching your progress over the last couple of years and seeing you run a business, go from lecturing, studying, doing all these things to now really feeling aligned and driven and, as you were saying, balanced to what that looks like for you. Watching your growth has been so inspiring, and now getting to be on the receiving end. So I was fortunate to coach you, and now you're coaching me, which is awesome.
The student has become the teacher.
What's that Disney movie where it's that Kung Fu Panda? Is it Kung Fu Panda? Where
I've never seen it. Sorry.
Might be Pixar then, it's all right. Don't worry about it. But it's very cool to now be on the receiving end, having known the growth and the experiences that you've had to now get to work with you, who's one of the Australia's leading vocal coaches, and you're incredible. And we've done. Polish, yeah.
My job here is done.
Headphones off and cut.
Yeah, that's a wrap.
But for me, it's been such an interesting experience, and we've got you booked in for our hot seat within our academy members in November. So if you're not in the academy and you want to see more of Marcus, get in there.
Jump on.
But I've taken away so much more than I originally first thought I was getting into it for. I, sought out you to help me with, I guess, things for the podcast, and I feel like I'm very monotone and speak really fast and, get a tired voice. And I was like, Marcus is the man. And then since we've been working together, it's brought up a whole range of other things that you don't realize and I'll just say as a man, because predominantly talking to men, but people in general, we avoid. And for me, I work in, the men's health space and talk a lot about confidence and valuing who you are. And now we're doing all these vocal exercises with yourself, and all this stuff's coming up like I'm not proud of my voice. It's that last, as you say, the last part of expression.
Bit of us that we give to the world when we communicate.
Yeah. And so I'm listening to that and I'm like, that is why I feel like I'm always talking into my throat.
Yeah.
And you've been teaching me how to get up higher, and as we've been going through that process, all this shit's come up for me. I'm like, I don't feel comfortable like really verbalizing what I, think about or what I feel. And that's why I think I do talk into that, because I'm hoping that it muffles it out a bit. And people just go, he said something insightful. So,
well, it's a way of underplaying what you're really thinking. It's a way of underplaying what you're really feeling, because you're holding the thought and the feeling and the sound with yourself. But if you think about the moments where you're really alive with passion, when you're in love, when you hate someone, when you're grieving, all of those kind of extremes, the voice just shoots up. It's never, I love you. How authentic,
Oh, I love you too.
I'm so in love with you. Yeah.
Yeah,
the
unless
voice.
you got a joint in your mouth, maybe.
Dude.
Yeah.
But when we feel deep and profound things, the voice becomes profoundly more present, I suppose. And I think you're 100% correct. There's a tendency for men, and I think particularly Australian men, to lean kind of more into a more macho tone where the voice has to be, kind of be down and like big and blokey. And so we ignore a lot of the register and the capacity of our voice that sits higher in kind of like, I suppose, what singers might refer to as like a head voice. Because I think often Australian men, and maybe men in general, think that, notes that sit up here are effeminate. Just because of the way that they sound. And that's not to say that, in our classes together, I'm not suggesting that your next podcast, I'm going to go with the Bee Gees theme, sound like Barry Gibb, But when you're talking and you're, again, when you're passionate about something, the voice just kind of flips around, and it should have that freedom to just, find its way all the way up the top and then kind of come back and settle down wherever it might want to settle, because that's free expression.
It's from a personal level, like I've done breath work, I've done hypnosis, all so many things trying to really unpack stuff in my own head that had me in a position where I wasn't happy and I didn't enjoy my quality of life. And I thought I'd dealt with all of it. So it's been really insightful to now go through this and see that how we use our voice. In the example you gave before, it's like, I love you. How we say things quite, is equally, if not more important as the words we're actually saying. And we've established or highlighted a few things. I start a sentence before I've even finished the last one, and it sounds like, as I've just done then, and it sounds like
we planned that earlier.
Yeah, that was. I'm better now. I'm a recovering
speed talker.
Speed talker. So here we are, but. It's made me really think about how you can have more impact with what you're saying. And as a coach myself, and speaking, and just even as a husband and one day a dad, and all of these roles, I really do want to have the most influence that I can. So looking at the power of my voice and also unpacking why I've been afraid to use it has been quite confronting, because I still have got more stuff to work on, but I even feel it when I'm talking about specific topics that I don't feel confident in, that I'll start talking down again, and I'm like, come on, mate, fucking pull your head in here, just speak normally, even if you're not confident, have the discussion in the tone of voice that's not putting pressure on your throat, you're not muffled and speaking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, so it's quite a fascinating thing.
Well, I think the swallowing of the voice when you're maybe not confident in what you're talking about, or you're trying to figure something out, that's a way, again, of not wanting to sound wrong, not wanting to sound like an idiot, because the voice is kind of just staying with you and maybe other people aren't going to hear. And then, obviously, as well, the other people are going to perceive that you're uncertain. So straight away, it starts to undermine the integrity of what you're saying.
Yes.
It starts to undermine you as... if it's in a professional atmosphere, it undermines you as a professional, because all of a sudden you're the bumbling one that isn't clear on what they're saying. Obviously, they don't understand their job. They don't understand the project they're working on or whatnot. It's a thing I talk about to training actors. I say strong and wrong.
Strong and wrong.
Strong and wrong. If you've got an idea, like let's say we're workshopping a scene or something, if they've had an experience of it, articulate it in a way that makes sense, but don't question it. You'll find your way I always think that you'll find your way to talk about complex things that you've thought about or experienced if you just start talking, because then you can, even if you're starting in like big, broad circles of conversation here, you'll slowly distill it down into something that's a little bit more specific, perhaps a little bit more profound, but profound doesn't have to be big, fancy words. The profound could be quite simple. And I think the key to to anyone feeling comfortable with what they're saying is to make sure that they let the voice out so that their sound is heard, their ideas are heard, so that you can wrestle with it. Because it's harder to wrestle with big concepts just within yourself, I think.
That almost, thinking out loud to then process the idea. But you sort of almost touched on there as well, like the fear of being seen. It's something that, we all want to feel valued. We all want to feel heard. But if we're struggling with that subconsciously, as I was, I thought, because I'm on Instagram and social media all the time, it's like, I have fucking no problem with being seen. But then there's an element of myself that is afraid of.
Yeah. And so we end up putting forward kind of a version of ourselves. You know the movie The Mask?
Yes.
With Jim Carrey, that doctor that's like, we all wear masks, metaphorically speaking. He's right. He's right. Because we all present ourselves generally in a way out in kind of like the real world in how we want to be perceived. That could be as simple as sucking in the belly or bringing up the chest or, holding your face in a certain way so that, it reads a certain way. Maybe you want to look sterner and meaner and angrier or like the tough guy or whatever. But those are just layers of artifice that sit on top of the authentic you that people are actually properly interested in. It's, we're interesting enough as we are. We don't need to try and make ourselves more interesting, I suppose.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is important to be authentic?
Well, I think at the start it's about a sense of self. I'll talk about it from a creative artist's perspective, and then I suppose I can branch out from there. As a creative artist, if you're not connected to yourself, your art is inauthentic. Perhaps you're trying to replicate something that somebody else did. Perhaps that you're trying to just do what's hip and what's going to sell and things like that. But maybe if you take that leap of faith and actually reckon with yourself and go, actually, this is who I am, this is what I am, this is what I sound like, this is, the kind of being that I want to be, then maybe the art starts to become just that little bit more profound, to use that word again. And then I suppose when, if we broaden that into all kind of professional speakers like yourself, motivational speakers, even CEOs, teachers, that authenticity, I think, is important because it is what lets other people connect with us. If we were to be doing this podcast here today and I was like, oh, yeah, and then I said, and kind of presenting this kind of, gregarious arts
evangelistic.
Worker. Evangelistic, free your voice, child, all that kind of stuff. It's harder for you to properly access that information because I'm not being authentic and real and human, I suppose. I'm trying to make you think something of me as opposed to going, okay, well, here's some information. What do you think of that? And then we start to build that relationship together. If I'm bringing something else in and going, okay, cool, this is the man that I am, then it's not real. And so you're then probably going to augment yourself to try and connect with that as opposed to two dudes sitting at a table talking into a microphone. And that authenticity, I think, is hard to settle within yourself if you're not actively thinking about it. And it's not necessarily, when it comes to using voice work and the work that I kind of do for that, it's not that this stuff is therapeutic. It's not taking the place of therapy, of helping, individuals work through traumas or psychological stresses or battles that they might be having, but it is cathartic. It's the release of all the shit that we put on our body, on our breath, on our voice, to try and make it be something that we think is impactful so that we can just kind of let it be and let it be impactful.
To add to that, I think a lot of the work we've done as well, like we spent the first session and two, like really connecting back to breath.
Yeah.
And I think from a vocal standpoint, when you are trying to express yourself, and sorry, to go back to the whole, it's not taking place for therapy or anything like that, but for me, it's been an amazing tool. Like, honestly, amazing, because there's been things that you've asked me to do, and when I've done them, I've had thoughts about myself. Like when we were doing the high humming, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I sound ridiculous. But I'm grateful that I have the awareness to go, okay, well, why do I feel like that? What is it that I'm projecting within myself that I need to address here? Because I do want to get better at this, and this is part of the process, but I've got these subconscious beliefs that are now rearing their head because of the work that I'm doing that I need to work on. And I feel for a lot of us, when we do seek, we're with plenty of professionals, And often, a lot of the time, they're trying to help me get that out in various other ways because it's just me having a tough time up there. But a lot of the time, it's that awareness and getting to just hash it out and build upon ideas or discuss certain things that are going on and that's from my experience. So that's why for me, this vocal coaching has been fucking next level. I came in to do it for a professional reason because I wanted everyone who's listening right now to enjoy my sexy voice a bit more. But
ladies and gentlemen, LAchlan Stuart.
And that was me, actually.
He's a ventriloquist too. That's what we've been working on.
It's week 3. But it's given me so much more that, for me, I'm, very fortunate to work with a lot of CEOs and business owners. And I'm like, well, an area that you can get better is communication. How you actually express yourself, because there's going to be some other stuff that comes with it, and that's part of what I do. So get into it. We can discuss that, or you can just, as a result, you're going to communicate more effectively, which is going to improve relationships, improve your leadership qualities, but also help you have a greater understanding of where you're playing small.
Yeah.
And what you're really afraid of. I did have another point, but I forgot it. So
that's okay. I've got something I can swing into.
Can you add to that?
I suppose maybe I was a little bit absolute in terms of it's not therapy. It's therapeutic, but it's not therapy.
Yeah.
So it's that little bit of release of things, which I suppose is why I use the word catharsis to release, as opposed to necessarily process and go through the details of your psychology. But I think it's important to be able to acknowledge why we hold tensions in that certain way. I know for me, when I was at high school, because I'm about 6'4.5", I developed a tall man stoop.
Really?
Yeah.
I was literally about to say, I wish I had your frame.
Well, I had a tall man stoop because I felt gigantic. I was also just, a little bit overweight as well. So I was just very, very conscious of the fact that I was the lumbering giant in my cohort. And I'd always been the biggest in the year. But then when I went to uni and I started training as an actor, I then started overcompensating and I would puff the chest out. So when I come and do, voice work with Patsy, it's always this little tension here that disappears and that relaxes the shoulders, and then the breath drops and then I start crying. I'm a big crier when it comes to voice work. Guaranteed it's going to happen.
Perfect.
And that's the catharsis. For me, it's the release of I'm a tall person, so people expect me to be up and big and strong and And I'm in an image-driven industry as well. But when you let that chill, the body does actually just find its natural size. And I look massive when I let this relax. When I'm doing that and I'm bringing it out, you can see that there's this tension held and it's almost compacting me as opposed to expanding me. So that kind of release on the body creates a release in the breath, that creates a release in the voice, because the breath and the voice are housed in the body. So we've got to release the body before we can do anything with the voice, which is why, for those first 2 weeks, we didn't make any sounds.
Yep.
I think at the end of the second lesson, you were making an S sound, complex. But it's a thing that a lot of clients will go like, why haven't I used my voice yet? And it's like, well, we're working on the structural tensions to make sure that your body is released in the space so that the voice can do the same thing. When I teach it at voice in universities, it's kind of like week 5 or 6 that we start using the voice normally, so that we've got full time to really explore the body, the breath. And I think in terms of, people who hold positions of power, whether that's in a small business or a corporation, I think it's important that they understand how their body reads when they enter a room. Are they the physicality that sucks all the air out of the room and makes everyone sit up uncomfortably in their chair? Or are they coming in with benevolence and openness to go, yeah, I'm the boss, but in a way, I'm kind of just the person directing everything that we do together. And that starts to come across in the way that they use their voice. Are they talking over people? Are they just big and loud and obnoxious? Are they just shouting? Or are they ineffective in the opposite direction, where they're kind of undermining their own integrity by mumbling and talking down here? I think it's important that all of us who use our voice for communication in our work are conscious of the fact that it's the body, the breath, and the voice that is what starts to build relationships with the people that we work with. And it's their perception of us, and that's just going to affect everything that we do.
Definitely. And I was going to add to that, it affects everything that we do. It affects our relationships, our employment, social life is the body, the breath, and learning to be connected to that. For me, breath work is something that, I don't do it every day anymore, but practice at least once or twice a week where I'll do an intentional breath session before we warm up for the podcast now. I do my warm-ups and everything like that because I want to be able to maximize my voice. And it's not just for the podcast anymore. It's legitimately, I want to be able to communicate effectively with my wife and have influence where I can add value and not sort of be held back because of, talking into my throat. You touched on a moment ago when you were 16, you're like taller than everyone else and you developed the tall man's slouch.
Yeah.
How did you work through that process to learn to be comfortable? And I guess, how did you stumble across the fact that it was voice that could help you with a lot of that stuff?
I don't think I've ever reckoned with I have reckoned with it, but I don't think I've ever made peace with the size of me in a space. Not because I feel like, that I'm...
What do you mean by made peace? The size of you.
Developed a comfortability and ownership of it.
Yep.
I think as an actor as well, the fact that, that I'm quite tall, I'm quite imposing physically, I have a relatively imposing voice, I have a relatively stern face. I just feel like there's a lot of things that go, man, about me. And I think
the poster boy for man.
But I know that, that a large man reads in a certain way in a space. In terms of like the way, not in all situations, but in some situations, the way big men read in the space is often imposing, intimidating, and things like that. So I think for me, because, I work with a lot of diverse cultures, a lot of diverse gender identifications as well, it's just constantly being aware of, okay, cool, how am I using my body in this space? Am I peacocking and making everybody kind of move back physically? Am I leaning in and talking down to short people? Or am I just imagining we're on eye level and just kind of chilling in the space with each other? And that's a concept that I've been trained in with my mentor Patsy, which is this idea of first, second, and third circle, which is one of her books. The first circle is where we're kind of squashed in. Third circle is where we're pushing our energy out, but second circle is where we're there with people and not trying to force our energy onto them or shy away from them. And I think when I started doing that work with Patsy in 2018, that's when I started to develop a comfortability with my physicality in the space as a teacher and in the space as a man as well, with my friends, with my partner, with my family. And I think in an age of the rightful destruction of toxic masculinity, I think what we've got to be doing is modeling the better alternative and not just knocking the other one out of the way. So it's I think it falls to all men, regardless of size or shape, that we've got to be working to model this better version of masculinity, the way that the male body reads in the space, what its purpose should be, not to destruct or to oppress, but to be open, to support, to communicate, to be benevolent.
It's to add on to what you're saying, like it is very hard. Personally, everyone's got their hardships, but being a man, even if you always hear about these things and I'm like, well, I'm fairly muscly and, people look at me like a jock, which I'm a recovering jock. But I also feel like, people can look at me as intimidating if I'm running down if it's just me and then I'm running past, a chick on the sidewalk. I'm like, I have these thoughts to myself where I'm like, I hope I'm not intimidating her.
Yeah. And
I also have thought about, well, where does that come from? Because I don't think I'm an intimidating person. I'm not a asshole. I'm minding my own business and I'm just running, but I still think that. And I'm like, is that because of where we're at as a society now? Is that also detrimental to how I'm living my life? Because I overthink that almost to a point where it's like...
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with being aware of it. And I suppose, just to clarify, I don't feel like I'm ever oppressed as a middle-class white male. I don't feel like an awareness of the presence that I have in the space is ever something that I, feel like is something I shouldn't be aware of. But I think the awareness of it in kind of this post-Me Too, post-Time's Up world, the movement and its kind of size has not stopped, but it's kind of dropped back a bit. So now we've got to act on it. And I think you're doing one of the important things, and I think I do it as well, which is just being aware.
Yep.
And, it could be as simple as if you're both walking down the one street and there's a young woman in front of you or someone who appears that they're, intimidated, go to the other side of the road.
Yep.
Just those, almost kind of like those old school common courtesies.
Yep.
That isn't necessarily chivalry, but just thinking about, well, what can I do with my body to change the energy that I'm carrying in the space?
Yep. It's interesting. I also think that's, well, obviously I've shared with you why I originally, the first insult that I received from someone around my voice being so high that I was like, fuck it, don't need to talk.
Yeah.
And I feel as well when I'm speaking to people, I never want to express myself in such a certain way that they feel like they can't share their, their perspective or opinion, because it's extremely important for me to have people feel comfortable sharing their opinion or things that are important to them in a space. So we, as we touched on earlier, you can open that dialogue to build something together. We're in such a tough time where maybe because of social media chatter that people just read something and just blast the other person. There's no actual constructive conversation anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel as well there's times where I do want to be more assertive with, I guess, my voice and certain things, but I'm almost thinking about the other person. I'm like, I hope that they are aware enough to go, hey, let's have this conversation. Just because I'm assertive doesn't mean I'm fixed on it, because I'm definitely open to learning. But it also, as we've touched on, if you don't use your voice as well as you could, it dilutes your credibility to a degree and everything like that. So I'm thinking out loud right now, because as this is coming up for me, I'm like,
well, maybe there's something in that the fact that we have these big philosophical conversations now in comment threads, where we can't hear the intonative structure of the voice, we can't hear the energy of the person, we just see text and it becomes absolute. We don't hear, the moments where we might be talking to them and go, it's kind of this, where you can hear the giant question mark behind the voice. We're losing out in those conversations on those descriptive factors. So maybe that's what's contributing to this almost absolutism. And that's then having an impact on how we talk as well. That because because of all those thread conversations, that we're also not using the muscles, we're not using the voice in that same way, we're not there with other people having a conversation, we're on other sides of the globe. Maybe there's anecdotal evidence out there that supports that. Maybe there's research that supports that. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's probably definitely a factor in the fact that we don't use our voices expressively as we have maybe historically.
It's interesting to think about. You've given me something that I'm going to go spend some time in a book later on this afternoon just thinking about, because I agree with you. I think I feel like there are definitely times where I can't express myself in the way that I want to, because I'm wanting to be considerate and I'm wanting the dialogue and conversation to open. But I also know that there's been times where I've been completely shut off the conversations because, I've said this on the last couple of podcasts, when your emotions high, your intellect's low, and I get triggered by shit all the time.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, well, what specifically about that is pissing me off?
Yeah.
And then you sort of work through that whole process.
I think the voice is the bridging gap. If you're in control of the voice, so if your body's, here's my theory, if the body's released and the breath is just kind of moving, doing its thing, and the voice is free, you can then harness the emotions and be more specific with what you're saying because you're in control of your voice. If you're in control of your voice, you can establish a moderate speech rate. You can be articulate structurally in the words that you're saying, but then also articulate in the words that you choose to use. If I just go into a conversation, I'm talking at 10 million miles a minute, then I'm not necessarily actually thinking about the things I'm going to say. I'm just trying to get my point across, and I don't want to hear what anybody else has to say. And at the same time, if I'm just kind of like slurring and mumbling, then I'm a little bit careless with my words in the opposite extreme. But I think energetically, if you're not that in the space with the other person, if you're not slumped back too much, if you're physically there with the other person and actually working to engage, if you're not cutting them off, if you're not talking over the top of them, if you're acknowledging literally in the words that you say, okay, cool, I hear you out. My perspective is this, though. I'm not saying you're wrong, but my perspective and my experience is this. So the words we use are also a massive contributing factor to that it's not just, it's kind of what you're saying at the start. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And it's not just how you say it, it's what you say. Being intentional with the sound.
Circle of life.
It's not just, it's one feeds the other. Mm-hmm. If we're not in control of the voice, we're not in control of what we say. If we're not in control of what we say, we're not in control of the voice. And I think it's up to us, or it's up to those that have positions of influence to be the force that starts that trend. So again, to go back to that kind of corporate world, if you're the head of a company, you're the CEO, you're the general manager, it's up to you to foster the environment of, okay, let's actually have an open dialogue. I'm not just going to facilitate an open dialogue and nod politely and then walk away. I'm actually going to hear you out, and then we're going to reckon with the ideas that you're bringing forward.
How do you feel you could implement that in a workplace? Like that sort of open dialogue and really hear people out and work on that?
Yeah. I think, and not just touting my own work here, but I genuinely think that body, breath, and voice training is a way to do that, because it's an equalizing force. It's not something that some people can do and some people can't. Everybody can do it. And if everybody's moving through the work as an ensemble, it's a term we use in theatre and the creative worlds a lot, but I really do think the idea of ensemble is important in any kind of workplace, because it's that the collective is the thing that's important. It's almost communist in nature, but the individual doesn't matter as much as the collective. And so if we're working in that way of working towards openness, working towards benevolence, then there's a culture that starts to be fostered that I'm not only in this workplace, but I am seen in this workplace and I am heard in this workplace. And those three things maybe start to culminate, I feel valued in this workplace. And it's not necessarily an easy thing to do those things for yourself, and it's not necessarily, an easy thing to do those in a workplace setting either. But I don't know. I feel like I don't know if I have the complete answer. That's an answer.
Yep.
That's an option. But yeah.
I think it's fantastic. I do agree that when you feel valued, you're more likely to participate in, providing solutions to challenges and issues, or just even working harder, because it's like, this is part of mine as well. The strength of the organization is dependent on the strength that I show up with as well.
It's community building. Yeah.
Very, very powerful. How do you go as a creative person, so actor, voice coach, producer, director, all the things that you do, which is very creative.
Many pies.
Many pies.
Call me Pie Man.
How do you do that, but then run a business? Do you find it's difficult?
Well, the good thing is that a lot of the directing, the producing, the voice acting, the acting, and the voice coaching is the business.
Touche.
Yeah, so that's how. Answer done. Bye. It's, I don't know, it's tricky because, there's a lot of factors at play. There's certain milestones you need to hit as an actor in your 20s. Maybe there's certain milestones you need to be hitting as an actor in your 30s. Maybe I have or haven't hit those. I don't know.
Yeah.
So And then likewise, as a voice actor, there's milestones that maybe you need to be working to hit. Maybe you need to be working to have X amount of jobs a year or X amount of national campaigns or working towards to be the voice of a brand or whatever. But I feel because my artistic practice is so diverse that it's not always just about, well, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to go do that. Sometimes it's, well, this is where the work is coming at the moment, so I'm going to go do that for a little while.
Yep.
But for me, I think the way I've always thought about it is, you know those drawings you do in kindergarten and preschool where you use like a candle and then you paint over the top of them with watercolors and the wax stays clear? Go with me here. I have a purpose. I often think that a career, particularly in the arts, you start out when you start training or when you start working, and you're doing these big, broad brush strokes with a paintbrush, and you start to find where all these little crayon trails are sitting. And then you might go, oh, this one looks interesting, and paint along that one for a little while. And then that one's going to shoot off into another 6 little branches, and you might go down 3 of those. But at the same time you're doing that, your other hand's over here, and it's doing another one. So it's not always just about, I want to do this, so I'm going to drive towards it and do that. You can. Plenty of people do. But for me, I like the idea of maybe being a little bit freer, fluid in that structure. Yeah, that it's not, I'm bound to a certain thing. There are many facets to my skill set, and they're all complementary to each other. So it's, when making the decision as to what jobs to take or what jobs to advocate for or to seek or to create for myself, what do I feel physically, emotionally, psychologically capable of at that point in time? If it's the end of the year, I probably shouldn't take on a big thing because I'm probably too pooped.
I want to wind down,
Yeah, wind down, not wind.
Yeah. Wind down.
Hashtag it. Hashtag wind down.
Title of the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. If it's, do I need to do a certain project for financial gain? For me, coming into the second 6 months of this year, as I think I said a bit earlier, I went from full-time lecturing to just 1 day a week. So for me, my income was just slashed. Yeah.
Slashed.
So it was literally, okay, we got to make some money. And so that's why I've been advocating the channels that I've been, I'm not advocating, leveraging the channels that I've been working on, because I go, okay, I know that I can build work out of this, and that's going to make me financially stable, which is then going to give me the headspace and the psychological ease to go, okay, well, what can I plan to do next?
I think I fucking love that you can own that, because there are a lot of people who are in not in denial, but cannot openly say, look, certain jobs that I'm doing, certain client, things that I'm taking on board are for financial gain. But there's a real weird, it's a weird topic. Sex and money seem to be things that people are like, you can't talk about that in public.
I think it's because if you just go, oh, this, and I'll clarify after I say this, if you just
think
say
out loud here.
That, this job is purely for financial gain, maybe your heart and soul's not in it.
Yep.
I don't do things that my heart and soul's not in.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's for financial gain, but it's also, it's still the thing that I want to do. It's one of the things that I want to do. I enjoy it. I feel fulfilled doing it. But maybe it's also something that's not going to completely decimate my energy stores emotionally or psychologically or physically. Maybe it's something that's a little bit easier on those fronts, that's going to allow me to, build up a little bit of money that, you can live on when the work gets a bit sparse as an actor. But yeah, I am a believer that, if your heart's not in it, if you don't actually want to do the job, then don't take it on. If you don't want to, if you don't want to work with a client, or if you don't feel you're the right person to work with a client, don't do it, because you're always going to be second guessing or going, oh, I really don't want to fucking be here today.
Yep.
And that energy reads, because it will come across in your voice that they'll say something and be like, yeah, so let's do the next thing. Hello.
Well, my phone's ringing. My dog ate my homework.
Yeah.
No, that's a very good point. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about working for yourself is we have the, I guess, direction to do the work that we love doing. And obviously there's things that you love more than other things. But once again, if you look at it as let's say a holistic approach to business, you've got your financial gain, your fulfillment, potential leverage, a number of things that come from that. It's like, okay, well, what does this job look like in regards to that? I'm still going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But this is the other things that it's going to afford me. It might be networking. It might be monetary. It might be a number of things that we've said as well, which is exciting. But then you also get to build that around your own life, because you said at the start, balance. And everyone's trying to find balance. But we're always looking to add things to our life to create that balance. And I think for me, it's not really balance anymore. It's just like it's a pendulum. Sometimes my work needs more of me, and I love what I do as well. So it's not like, oh, fuck, I've got to work more. It's like, awesome, yippee. And then other times my relationships or my health or holidays need more of me. And I've had to really learn to swing with that, to go, okay, well, if I am giving more to my relationship, other things are going to require sacrifice. And as a result of the sacrifice, this is potentially what could happen. And I'm okay with that, because I don't want to lose this, or I don't want to lose my health, or I don't want to burn out.
Yeah.
And I think whereas everyone's trying to go full steam ahead on everything, and once we get 100% on 10 areas of our life, we're like, yeah, I've got it.
And I think that's often associated with an idea of success.
Yes.
And that if you're not ambitious, that an ambitious person is the one who's giving 110% to absolutely everything. And maybe there are some people that can sustain that. And maybe there was a time in my life when I could sustain that. Maybe I could still sustain that if I wanted to. But I think there's got to be that certain level of settling with yourself to go, okay, well, what do I actually want out of life? Do I just want to work 9 to 9, 9 a.m. through to 9 a.m., 7 days a week? Or do I want to be able to go, I actually feel really, really good about what I'm doing, and I'm going to let that surge in professional happiness carry across into my into my personal life, or let the happiness in my personal life be something that becomes infectious in my professional life. I think you can be ambitious and not be a slave to yourself or your job or anything like that. And I do agree that working for yourself is one of the things that is beneficial for that. Because you kind of get to set your own KPIs. Yeah. You get to do your own performance review.
You've been great this month.
You're fired. I shouldn't do that voice. That's problematic. We can cut that, right? Yeah. We can cut that. We'll cut that. We'll put that in for the special features DVD.
Special features.
But yeah, I think that idea of balance being something that changes is super important, because to balance the scales, literally, if you change the weight on one side, you've got to change the weight on the other side. There's two kind of images that I like to work with that. The first one comes from my best mate, who talks about the support that you sometimes need and sometimes give in a relationship, that it's not always 50-50. Sometimes one person in that relationship needs 70% of the support. Yep. And so 30% is then given back. Maybe they need 100% of the support at any point in time, and nothing is given back. But that's part of balance. That it's not 70% and 70%. There's 70-30 there, and it's balanced. And I would say that kind of relationship, that kind of dynamic in a relationship, is not just for personal ones, partners, friends, and family, but I think it could also be for professional relationships.
Definitely.
And then the other one is one that my mum gave me. Hey, Mum. When I was in high school, is this idea of a wagon wheel. And that if you've got the wagon wheel, you've got the spokes that come out from the center.
I was thinking of the chocolate wagon wheel.
Hey, well, that too. Sponsored.
Yes.
Each spoke has to be equidistant apart from each other, or the outside integrity of the wheel is jeopardized. And as the wheel is turning, it'll snap.
Interesting.
So you've got to make sure that each part of your life is equally proportioned, so that the whole is strong, that the whole of your life is stable and sturdy enough to go along the cobbled street roads or go along a nice smooth patch of grass. So yeah, they're just kind of two images that I like to bounce around in my head sometimes.
Genius.
For balance.
Balance. Who is one of the most influential people in your life, and how have they had an impact on you?
Everyone that knows me is going to be going, oh, I know the answer to that. And I'm just going to give the answer that they know I'm going to give. So your $50 is coming to you. My mentor, Patsy Rodenberg, has just absolutely changed my life professionally and personally. I started working with her in 2018 when she came to Melbourne to do a Shakespeare masterclass. And it was from that point on that voice work just grabbed my attention. And the benefit that I felt that it had in me changed the importance that I placed on it in my craft as an actor and in my emerging craft as a voice teacher and a lecturer. And then working with her again in 2019, and then going to New York in 2019, some online training in 2020, and then in Silvas, Portugal this year. It's just been an opportunity for me to not only build a part of my career that is both exhilarating and frustrating and daunting and exciting and rewarding and fulfilling and draining all at the same time, but to do so with someone that is not only there to teach me about something, but to nurture me as a teacher and as an artist and as a human as well. And, she's one of the first people to remind you that you've got to do the work for yourself before you can do the work for others, and the work with others, I should say. So I'll be eternally grateful to Patsy for what she's done for my work. She's a truly magnificent woman. And I suppose that's kind of like a little theme that trickles through my life, is that I've just been surrounded by really, really strong women throughout my entire life. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, really, really strong women in their own rights. So yeah, I would say that, of recent years, it would probably be someone like Patsy, but I think definitely my mother and my grandmother as well, because they're the ones that got me here. They're the ones that have actually allowed me to be here today. They're the ones that, provided the structure and the support and a place of nourishment for me to actually survive life.
To survive? You're thriving, bro.
Yeah, we're trying.
We're getting it.
I put my feet in a bucket of sea salt every night just to make sure that that's a gardening joke for anyone watching at home. But Tish, you're welcome. Next question. I'll go. That's how this works. I go now, right?
The eject button. Straight to the roof of the building.
That's not a sound desk. That's Dr. Evil's little buttons. I'm going to fall backwards, aren't I?
Into the shark tank.
Yeah.
Where can people find you and find out more about your work? Obviously, for those in the academy who are listening to this, you'll get a masterclass, which will be awesome fun, in November. And we are going to allow you to bring a mate, which will be even better, because I truly do believe in the work that you've done, and it's been so impactful and beneficial for me. And anything that I personally, whether it's from books to podcasts to mentors that I have that impact my life, I'm a raving fan, because it helps me go from, it's that next level. It's like going up in video games to the next level, and you've
gone dungeon crawling with me, Lachie. And you've gone up in XP. You're going to come out as Gandalf the White, basically.
Gandalf the White. I'm a big fan.
Lachie the White.
Prefer Legolas, but we'll go Gandalf. He's not very wise.
But that hair, though.
I was only talking about Lord of the Rings because the power of the ring. The big billboards just over there. So every time I drive home, I'm like, I'm going to start watching that tonight. Amy's like, no, you're not.
Not in my
house. I went through COVID and I was obsessing over Star Wars. I watched all of the Star Wars, and then I went back through the Lord of the Rings again. Absolutely love them. So good. Not many people like me for that, but anyway.
I like you for it. I like you for it. It's the only reason I'm here today, basically.
Because you're the fan. I'll give you a Gandalf hat later. Where can people find or get in contact with you, find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
So I've got a couple of social media platforms. I've got like a business Facebook page, Marcus Oborn, and then an Instagram account as well. I always post information about, not only the shows that I might be working on or directing or acting in or whatever, but also any workshops or masterclasses that I might be running in body, breath, voice, or text or acting kind of classes. You can also go to my website, marcusoborn.com.
Check that one out.
Check it. Links and details below. Subscribe.
No, you just say me saying that.
No, really?
Yeah,
Hey, should I do that thing where it's like I don't know where the button is?
I don't know whether it's up, to the left, to the right, but it's somewhere.
But click. And on there, there's a bunch of information about my background, my training, and kind of my areas of focus, and also my philosophy of working with people on their voices. There's a contact me page on there. But I'm running a string of classes in Toowoomba, where I live, and also in Brisbane. I'm teaming up with the Factory Acting Studio to do a bit of a trial class on October 24th.
If you can send me those.
Yeah, brill.
And I'll just put them in. They'll be the same thing down below. You can go have a little look and play around with that.
And then I'm starting to branch out and work with teachers as well. Because
I saw you posted that yesterday.
Yeah. Yep. So with the Empire Theatre in Toowoomba, we're trialling a professional development for teachers and educators.
That's cool.
So that they can come and learn how to use their voice. There's a study that I stumbled across in my doctorate research that said that it costs $5.6 million a year for teachers to go to the GP to say, I have a sore throat. That's not for remedial therapy for it. That's not for working with a speech pathologist, a vocal coach, an ear, nose, and throat doctor. That's just the $65 to go to the doctor and go, I don't feel good in my throat. $5.6 million that comes out of teachers' pockets. So I think, it's an incredible opportunity to start giving educators something that they need, because they're using their voice 5 days a week, but aren't provided with that training when they train as a teacher. So starting to step out and do things like that. I'm curious to pick your brains about men's wellness workshops as well. So I'm kind of opening up my repertoire of work to go beyond simply working with actors, to bring it into a corporate world and education settings and beyond. So yeah, not only am I happy to take on one-on-one clients, but I'm happy to work with businesses or to just dream something up. And if you're like, I want to work on this, then we can work on that. I like I said about the candle wax painting. I don't like to go, I do this one thing.
That's it.
Where else can it be applied, and what can we build together that's going to be beneficial?
That's exciting.
Yeah,
very, very exciting, mate. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome, and I've learned a lot, and I am super proud of your journey and the goals that you're kicking. It's fucking awesome.
Thank you, sir. I'm just impressed I didn't make an ass out of myself.